right, we'll go ahead and get started. I believe you all know me. My name is Monet, and thank you for joining us today for the NEMSQA V3 implementation call. Today is November the 13th, and we would just like to remind you to please update your name and affiliation in your participation list. So if you're listed by a phone number, we just want to remind you to change that to your name so you can get credit if you are needing compliance to verify your participation on the call. Again, these meetings are recorded and shared on the NEMSQA website as well as the YouTube channel. Feel free to share with your team as you need to share the information. Again, we encourage your participation. All right, so one of the things I want to do before we go ahead and get started is I just want to make a quick announcement about someone who participated in the meeting. And give me one second here. All right, so are you able to see the notice here about Miss Kelly Drum? Give me a thumbs up, someone.
We can see it.
I'm sorry?
We can see it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, so we just want to mention that Miss Kelly Drum, we express our condolences to her family, her friends, and her colleagues. Miss Kelly Drum was the state data manager in the state of Mississippi. She did attend the NEMSQA annual meeting. And unfortunately, she was feeling ill with headaches during the meeting. When she returned home, she did pass away. And so we would like to express our sincere condolences and to also just take a moment of silence to honor her. So if you would just join me in a moment of silence for Miss Kelly Drum. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to go back to this agenda. And we would like to go ahead and get started with Mr. John Britt to do a stakeholder introduction. And then, John, you'll follow up with the dashboard review.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well this morning. As I do most meetings, we'll start with a stakeholder introduction. The purpose of these is to get to know others on the call and to build connections that lead to collaboration, maybe get ideas for new hobbies, be spotlighted or embarrassed for 30 to 45 seconds, depending on how you see it, just to have some fun and be able to put names with faces. Unfortunately, I don't have anybody to introduce this morning because nobody has filled out my form to be a new stakeholder. And I know that there are some of you here who have not been introduced. So please take a second to scan this with your cell phone. You can do it, the form from your phone. It doesn't take long. Or I put a link in the chat if you're using a computer. You can click on that and do it. Literally, the average time it takes an individual to complete my form is less than 2 minutes. So please do that because I love to do these. I think most of the people on the call really enjoy them as well.
Can you share your screen?
Oh, I thought I did. I hit the wrong button. Thank you.
And this isn't just for new EMS stakeholders. If you've been around a while and haven't been introduced, you are more than welcome to sign up too.
That's correct. There you go. There's the QR code. So I'll give everybody a second to click that with their phone. And then, of course, the link is in the chat. I've already put it there. Next thing I'm going to do is do a quick review of a semi-dashboard. So we'll start with the NEMSQA web home page. This is just the opening page. And if you go to Technical Resources and Custom Element Library. So this is in something that was brought up quite a lot at the annual meeting about custom elements and not repeating them and seeing if other states have them. And people asked for a way to see what other states are doing and what they've done. And as it happens, we did that. We do that. So if you go again under Technical Resources, Custom Element Library, and click right there for Access the Custom Element Library, this is the Custom Element Library, and it's by state. You can search by state or all or an element itself. So let's say we wanted to look up something. The one we talked about in the annual meeting was rash. So let's see if there are any custom elements that have to do with rash. Oh, wow. There are. Delaware's using one. South Dakota's using one. Wyoming's using one. And these are all the places that they're using them. Or if I want to see what all the elements that are being used in a certain state, I can click on the state. And these are the only two custom elements being used by that state. Or if I want to see all of them, all of the custom elements on the national list. You can click on it and it'll take you straight to the element in our library. Pretty straightforward. If you want to see all the different stroke custom elements, for instance, that's all the states and elements that are using custom elements for stroke. So if you need a custom element for something, you could always search to see if there's one that already exists that you can borrow and or copy and or steal or change to fit your need that somebody else is using so that you don't have to create it. Or you can check the national one and see there was already one there that's not that you and you don't even have to copy one from a state. So again, just this was brought up in the annual meeting and something we just wanted to share because we think that there was some people who probably didn't know where this was. So,
hey, John, there's a question in the chat from Senate in Oklahoma.
I can't see.
What does the gray color mean? And what is the difference between blue states and gray states?
So correct me if I'm wrong with this, Jim, but as far as I understand it, the gray means that that state does not have any custom elements being used.
In their state data set.
Correct.
In the state data set that's on the website. Yep, exactly.
So Texas, New Mexico, California do not have any custom elements in their state data set. Senate, you are from Oklahoma, so those are all the ones that you were using. Are there any other questions?
And I would love to add, this is also a great way for the state data managers to go in and look and see if maybe you have any of those unintentional custom elements that sometimes make their way into a state data set, right? So let's say California, I'm going to use you as an example, Mark. I'm not sure if you're on the phone, but let's say California was blue and he's like, we don't have any. And he could click on his state or search for California the way John just showed it and look to see what was behaving as a custom element within the state data set for California.
Okay. Other than Chris's AI note taker, did anyone else have anything?
Looks like there's a few chats. Let me look through it really quick. Yes, we will post a link. We can absolutely do that. Amber says that she will take a look at hers. I'm paraphrasing. And Caitlin Hinga from Angel Track says that library came in super handy last month when they were integrating in their system. And that everything else is thanks. And there you go. And John posted the link in the chat already. Very quick work.
All right, thank you. And Monet, back to you.
Okay, thanks.
Is it updated? This should be up to date as soon as there's an element added. It should be up to date weekly. If I'm wrong with that, correct me, Jen. But
it gets updated every time they submit a state data set.
that's what I thought.
So it will change according to what is in the system. If you notice that yours is pointing to version 340, oh, I didn't realize I was on video. So the one thing to keep in mind is there are a few states that have not switched their master branch to 350 yet. They were maintaining master synced up with 340. So this might be looking at 340. So when you take a look at it, also double check with 350, 340. If you're not sure what the whole master branch thing means, feel free to reach out, send an email. We can always look that for you and help you with that. And we are starting to reach out to the states who have not switched, that are putting it in more than half of their state data in 350 to get you switched over to the master, being synced up with version 3.5.
Eliza, if your question, what is the protocol if your state has more custom elements listed than there should be? Just reach out to us, create a help desk ticket, and we will have a meeting. We can meet with you, figure out which ones need to be changed and updated. Best way to just do a help desk ticket.
And so as far as the protocol for getting them changed, that's going to be done with your vendor. So your vendor now with 350, and this is a big change between 340 and 350. With 350, the state data sets are submitted directly from your vendors via web services. And so any corrections that you make to your state data set will be submitted automatically. And once that is submitted and processed by the system, that's when that would be updated. So you can definitely open up a help desk, contact us, we'll help you figure it out. And then the request will have to go through your vendor to get those updated.
Sorry. I was thinking 3.4, 3.5. All right, back to you, Monet.
Okay, thank you. Jen, do you want to talk a little bit about the maintenance update, please?
Absolutely, I can do that. All right, I'm going to share my schedule, or I'm sorry, the schedule in my screen. So for those of you who aren't aware, we do monthly maintenance, and we set it up for the third Tuesday and Wednesday of every month, but we always like to remind folks that it's happening. So for November, you'll see that it's the 19th and 20th. If you experience any issues during that time frame, no reason to open up a help desk ticket. But if it's outside that time frame, you may want to shoot us a help desk ticket, an email, or ask us about it. And just in case you're not sure when you experience an issue, if it's in the maintenance window, you can always find that under technical resources for the net and then the NEMSQA maintenance schedule, and that'll bring you right here. And we do try to update that early in January, so these will be updated. But it's always the third Tuesday and Wednesday. And I did submit a question this morning just to make sure that that will not be changing for 2025. And I believe, Monet, am I the next topic as well for version 351?
No, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. Then back to you.
Okay. Hi there. Do we have Randall on the call? And Randall, we have you on the schedule to provide an update regarding your NASEMSO liaison role.
Yes, Monet, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So thanks for having me. The DMC, the Data Managers Council, did not meet in October. That meeting was canceled only due to the participation at the NEMSQA annual meeting. We had a lot of our state data managers there, so we did kind of still meet, just not in our normal setting. Right now, the Data Managers Council, they're working very hard on the blood product documentation. It's kind of our priority assignment. We're working on guidance document, best practices. Data managers aren't going at this alone. We're working with the NEMSQA tax, some of the other subject matter experts to make sure we can get this finalized as quick as possible and get guidance out to everybody. Yesterday, during our extended data definitions, we completed a rough draft of the e-response 11, which is the type of transport delay. So we're going to get that finalized. We're going to make sure that's all completed, get that up to NEMSQA to be added into that document. Kind of our future project for the extended data definitions is the e-response 12, which is the type of turnaround delay. We're hearing a lot of talk right now about extended wall time, so I think that'll be extremely helpful. And then another future project for the extended data definitions is e-patient 14. There's some new race categories, which is Middle Eastern or North African, and the definitions would need to be updated to match the OMB standard. So there was some previous field values that were in the past. For example, white, the definition in there says a person having origins of the original peoples of Europe, the Middle East, or North Africa. So we'll have to just make some updates to those definitions. So when those are complete, we will also let everyone know. And those are my updates for today. Any questions? All right. Well, thank you, Monet. Back to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for that update, Randall. We appreciate it. Okay, give me 1 second here. All right, I am going to provide an update regarding the NEMSQA annual meeting, and am calling this the wrap up. So the first thing I want to describe is the breakout of the participants. We had 170 participants total. This is the largest number of folks that we have had at the meetings to date. We had 157 people in person. There were 13 online, and there were a small number of folks online because we did not offer the virtual presentation for the software vendor sessions, only for state data managers. So that's why that number is so short or small. We had 43 state data managers in attendance and 2 EMS directors. 35 states were represented, 63 software vendors participated, representing 38 companies, 15 EPCR representatives representing 10 companies. There were 9 federal and international officials. Then we had 20 tax staff as well as DCC staff. These are the people who work on the back end, our biostatisticians and other folks that manage the warehouse. And then we have 5 other categories, EMS stakeholders from other categories. The next area I want to talk about are the topics that we discussed. And so we had a lot of different topics that we discussed. Some of them, when we reviewed the evaluations, we noticed that there was a lot of concern still about UUID. And so we'll be digging into that and see how we can do better. But there was some really good discussions. You can see the list of discussions here, and this agenda is also still on the NEMSQA website. We really wanted you to have a one-on-one experience with some of the national leaders. So we invited Gam Wijatonga from NHTSA's Office of EMS. He is the director there, over 20 years of experience in EMS. Some good initiatives that he's working on. You can read that here in this summary. Mr. Eric Cheney, of course, who is the federal project manager for the NEMSQA TAC, also has over 30 years of experience in EMS, also with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. We also invited Mr. Jeremy Kingsman, who also helps us here at the TAC, oversees the TAC project, another gentleman with over 20 years of experience from the National Office of Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Megan Caitlin is from the Office of National Drug Control Policy, the Executive Office of the President. She gave a powerful and personal testimony about her passion for the work that she's doing. She was also a strong advocate for the drug overdose surveillance dashboard. And she stayed for the entire meeting so that she can get a chance to talk to the stakeholders who attended from across the nation. We also had Miss Rachel Abbey. She's with the Assistant Secretary for Technology Policy and the National Coordinator's Office for Health Information Technology. Another young lady with over 20 years of experience in the industry. We invited Mr. Craig Winchek. He is now the principal investigator for the NEAREST project. That's the National Emergency Response Information System. Craig was there for a few days, also engaging with stakeholders who attended. And then, let's see here, didn't move. Okay. And then, of course, we have our NEMSQA tax staff and also contractors listed here who gave presenters. Mr. Randall Eimerman also gave a presentation during the meeting. And so all of these presentations are available. I'll show you where they are at the end of this presentation. And then I call this the dream team behind the scene. Myself, Mr. Chris Hoffman, who does a fantastic job giving us a visual concept of the meeting, that kind of creating energy that I need to put everything together. Miss Sally Perez is an IT project manager. She actually is not part of the TAC team, but she does help us a lot with every detail that is involved in the meeting. And so we owe extreme gratitude to her for her assistance. Misha Gergen is fairly new to the team, but she was hands-on at the check-in table. And so we really appreciate her. We appreciate Benji Alexander for all the breakout activities. And then Amanda Pope is also new, and she was able to provide some assistance as well. And now I want to talk a little bit about some of the findings from the evaluation. We wanted to know how you felt about the venue. And so we had about 4.62 average rating. You really liked that venue. Most of you enjoyed the catering, 4.31 average rating. The activities, we looked at how many people attended the s'mores event. Not many people among the total participants, but for those of you who did participate in the welcome event, you really enjoyed it. The other evening activities, we tried to create all of these opportunities so that you can sit with people. If you were new to the meeting, we wanted you to have an opportunity to have one-on-one conversations and just meet people, enjoy their conversations, get to know them, see what they're doing, strategize about solutions. But we noticed that a fair number of folks, at least 36% did not attend the evening activities. So we need to rethink that. The pre-conference forums, we noticed that 80% participated in the pre-conference forums. Fantastic. And then we looked at the forum breakdowns. We wanted to know how many folks attended which breakouts. And so you can see here, the majority of participants were in the data manager forums, or at least those who participated in this survey result. Then the data managers forum, what we wanted to do is find out how you felt about the information that was presented. And so we did fairly well, but we see that we have to make some progress as well on clarity of the information. The next slide here talks about the software vendor forum. Many of you really understood the message. We do have a little work to do to clarify the message as well here. And then the same for the EPCR forum. The EPCR forum was new this year. This is the first time we've done it. So there's a lot of room to grow, to learn, and to improve on for the next year. Then we talked a little bit about how you felt about the general sessions, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Friday was really considered a wrap up, but we see that for the most part, you did understand the message that we were trying to convey. However, we do need to continue to refine the process. And we recognize that no meeting is perfect, but we're working hard to really ensure that that while you're traveling and staying away from your family for as long as you are, that we're really presenting you with some good information. The other things we wanted to know about is the price on the meeting. Was it a fair price for the offering? And 80% of you said yes. Would certainly love to know a little bit more about why some said no, it wasn't a fair price. I try to keep the meeting costs really low. So definitely offer feedback. We need to hear it to improve the meeting. And then the next thing we wanted to know was would you recommend the meeting to other stakeholders? And a large number of you said yes, some said maybe. I'm so happy to see that no one said no. That's fantastic. And then we wanted to know about suggestions for improvement. And some said smaller work groups. And we'll definitely try to find a way to make sure that happens. And then create additional ways to get less vocal people to voice create additional ways to get less vocal people to voice their opinions during the meeting. Actually, this should say it should say exactly how it's reading. We want to try to encourage people who don't typically speak up to speak up during the discussions. We want to hear your voice. So I'll go ahead to the next slide and just show you a few pictures. This first group of pictures here is the s'mores night. You can see it was well attended and people enjoyed themselves. One of the fun things about this meeting was a lot of new people came out this year. And I really got a chance to meet these two gentlemen who talked about one says that he responds to Ricky Ricardo and the other one responds to George Lucas. Oftentimes people will ask them, you look like Ricky Ricardo, or do you go by George Lucas? So that was fun. We had a lot of new participants this year. And then we had a couple of Halloween kind of imposter stuff going on where almost 8 people showed up. 8 additional people showed up as Clayman. We know who's behind that, but I mean, it was fun for a minute. For a minute to just walk around and see all these name tags reading the same. Then we had 2 Halloween kitty cats, and the picture below is their spooky group that went to a spooky house. I call them the spooky house crew. Just a few more pictures. Benji did a great job getting us to move around in the room. The first picture shows smallest to tallest. How many children do you have? There's a group of folks who all have the same number of children. Then we were grouped by the color of clothing we were wearing, and people really had a good time. And that's what I look for, is to see all these smiling faces. Makes it worthwhile. This was the pool party. A lot of activity going on, a lot of those one-on-one discussions, people enjoying each other's company. And then also we had some more imposters. We had several people here listed as Randall Eimerman. And then the next picture is the Basin Rec Center. We had a great time. I had a fantastic basketball crew that we enjoyed playing together, and also pickleball for those who wanted to participate. This next slide is our scavenger hunt winner. He went all over town looking for things. I thought that was really funny. We mentioned that everything was in the hotel, but he did a great job and had a lot of fun. So the next steps, the TAC is reviewing the notes. We're prioritizing the action items. We will start to plan the next steps for how we're going to implement various things and suggestions and comments, all the things that you mentioned to us. And then our planning team will be gearing up for the next meeting, and we're looking at August of 2025. So stay tuned and continue to give us feedback. And then the meeting recordings are now posted on the website. Okay, I'm gonna stop and see if there are any questions. Anyone have anything they need to say, want to say? Any feedback?
There's a question in the chat, Monet, that says, are there any pictures from the dive site, from the cave?
I did not go to that event. I'm hoping that if someone has some pictures, they'll send them. And I would like to find a way to share the pictures so that everyone has an opportunity to see the pictures. But I don't have any pictures from the dive site. Thank you for the question. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and show you now how you can look at the recordings for the meeting. You'll go to the banner on the NEMSQA website. And if you did not participate, could not participate, we have the recordings listed here, first day, second day. Some of the information that we were not able to share or presentation slides are not here from Ms. Caitlin at ONDCP. But if you would like to review this information, please feel free to review it or share the information. Okay, the next thing I'm going to go ahead and talk about is the monthly report. And the way you can find the monthly report is under View Reports, Public Reports. And then it's right here under monthly report. It's the first link here on the top of the page. So this is the October report. And we would just like to mention that we put a small summary of the annual meeting here on this page. We also updated the state map because many of you are aware that Oklahoma has now gone green. And then we have our usual information about the V3 implementation call if you need to hear a recording of that. The information, well, we didn't have a public training in October, but we did have a public training in November. And so I'll show you how to get to that information. We have information about the presentations that our team participated in with other meetings. We have some information about, we still have the information about the version 3 candidate release information. If you need to find that, this is just a high level summary of some of the activity that the TAC is engaged in. And so please feel free to review this. I would love for folks to let me know if the information is clear about resetting the Okta accounts. That information has also been included in this report. And oftentimes I get several messages about resetting Okta accounts. Okay, I am going to go back to the NEMSQA website for just a moment so that I can show you, let's see, it's going to be under calls and training and then go to public trainings and sessions. And so our November training is here. That was with Randall Eimerman. And so you can just review that information if you missed that public training. Okay, are there any questions about anything? Okay, fantastic. Let me just pull up the agenda again. All right, and the next person that we have presenting is Josh Legler. He's going to talk about the state data set reviewer. Josh, are you with us today?
I am. Thanks, Monet.
Okay,
Get screen share up here. This is a really quick update, a minor update made to the online view of state data sets that are published through NEMSQA. So let me show you the breadcrumbs to get there. I'm going to pick on Kansas today and take a look at the online view for their state data set. So when I go to their state data set, we've made one small update in the custom elements section. So when I click on custom elements, the one thing that we added here was this legend in this list of custom elements over here on the far left, indicating which of these elements adds a new element versus the U for updating or extending an existing element. So you can see in the example of Kansas here that most of their custom elements are updates to existing elements. So they're probably adding, one more choice to a list of choices, or a few more, options to that list of choices, versus a couple down here that are elements that they would be adding rather than extending an existing element. So this is just meant to be a little more helpful as you review the list of custom elements and just get a quick indication of the level of effort that might be needed to implement these custom elements. These ones that are updating an existing element, it usually means you just need to add a value. You already have a place for this element in your UI. You've got it modeled in your database, everything else. So you're just going to add a value and a label versus elements that are being added. Those elements, you've got to model it in your database. You've got to model it in your UI, figure out where it's going to be, maybe figure out some validation around it, things like that. So those elements usually represent a little higher level of effort to implement in software products. So that's the update to the state dataset viewer, just this little legend here, updates versus additions. And that's it. I'll just check the chat. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Josh. We appreciate that update. All right, Jen, Correa, we have you next for 3 topics: the 351 candidate release, e-procedures, 14 discussion, and then Schematron rules.
All right, thank you very much. So the first topic is the version 351, just an update on how it's going. So far, you'll notice that on the screen, you can see this is located technical resources under data dictionaries and XSD at the top of the page. And notice this red note. This is not in production yet, right? We are in a candidate release, and the candidate release is a technical release. So we are looking for any issues within 351 that could technically stop a vendor from successfully switching over to version 351. The first window closed. We had 2 vendors that went through and reviewed version 351 and submitted. One of those was a technical item, and that technical item was a great catch because it was actually also that way in the XSD in version 350. So we got that updated and corrected, and all done already because there was only one of the technical requests. The other requests, many of them that have come in, are things that would be considered changes for the next version, right? Changes in description values or adding a new element, things like that are reactions to what is coming out in version 351. With one notable exception, which is the next topic that I have, which is e-procedure 14, which when you voted, that this was in e-airway, and I'm going to show you a mock-up of the 2 in just a moment. And then, so we're bringing this back to the stakeholders for some discussion. But before I share it, I want to make sure that I explain a little bit more about the candidate release and when it's time to ask for changes to the way something's going to be implemented. So you'll hear more about this in December and January, but we've implemented here at the TAC an actual process that will be used going forward for change requests. And you've heard a little bit about this at the annual meeting. You've heard a little bit about this throughout the year as we've started to work on it. The first step being the requester, right? You've opened up a help desk ticket. You and I, or you and Casey or Ben or any one of the team members here at the TAC may have some questions and some back and forth to help you develop the information that you're asking for, because it does need to be a full request before we move it to the next stage, right? We need to know exactly what you're hoping to ask for, what you're looking for to have changed. And then, you know, if it's already collected within NEMSQA, right, we'll show you where that is collected and how you would go about getting that information out. And then once we've determined, oh, this is a new request, this should move forward, we'll go ahead and we'll get a mock-up ready. We will get you, the requester, to approve that mock-up. Yes, this represents exactly what I was asking for. And then it will move on to a change review committee. And the change review committee is made up of different subject matter experts from across the EMS industry, and they will take these back to their respective subject matter counterparts, right, and discuss this with you. We will also get some feedback from others and do that. And then the change review committee will make recommendations, and they'll either approve it as is, right? They say, hey, we need to add rash, for example, to skin assessment, let's say. So we move that on to the next one. Or they could say, hey, we recommend an additional change, right? And we may go back to the requester and say, hey, this went to the change review committee. This is a suggestion they made. Does this work with what you're asking for? You know, those kinds of things. Or the change committee could say, you know, let's move forward with the request. We just need to put it in a different place or something along those lines. All of that will go back to the requester. They will be kept in the loop about anything that happens with your change. That's why it has to come through the help desk ticket. That ticket is used for tracking your change request. And then it'll come out to all the EMS stakeholders. This is the time for everyone to have opinions about the change that's being implemented, right? When we start bringing it out to all EMS stakeholders on the V3 implementation calls or anything like that, or in your vendor meetings, in the DMC council meetings or other NASEMSO meetings, billers meetings, we've also got users meetings. So anytime that these are brought, that is the time to have those discussions. Because once this is approved and we get to where we've done a candidate release, the candidate release is only for those technical changes. So you'll learn more about this in depth in the next couple months. If you have any questions or you're thinking about submitting a change, you're not sure if now's the time, feel free to go ahead and ask those questions. We'll let you know. I'm more than happy to walk through it. This is a new process for everyone, right? So there's bound to be bumps along the way. But what we're hoping is that nothing falls through the cracks and that there isn't, what we're going to talk about now, that this doesn't happen again, right? So the next thing we're going to talk about, are there any questions before I move to the next topic? And I don't see anything in the chat, so I'll go ahead and feel free to ask them at any time. So when you voted on the, let's go to the one. When you voted originally to add airway placement technique, the vote was done for adding it to the E-airway group as E-airway 12, which would be here in this group, which allows it to be filled out anytime this airway group is utilized, right? And it looked something like this. And this is what you voted on. And that was passed. And then it went back through review and discussions. I cannot find on any of the recorded meetings that we've had or any of the notes that I have where this was brought back to the stakeholders. Hence, we're bringing this back to you so that we can make sure that everything is done correctly and kind of going back to the way we want to do things with the new change request process. So how it was changed for version 351 is it was placed into the e-procedures section right here. So when you do an e-procedure, kind of like the vascular access location, and it was a new e-procedures 14. And this is what it looks like currently in the version 351, right? So we can talk about this. It is not whether or not the new element is going to be in version 351 that we're voting on. It is going to be in. That was approved. Where it will be in version 351 is what we're going to be voting on. And the vote will take place sometime between December 5th and December 9th, right? We want to give you time to think about this, take this back to your teams, take this back for discussion. I'm happy to share this document with the groups if you would like to go ahead and have discussions internally about it. And then we'll give everyone a chance to vote on it. And I'm not sure if the vote is going to be through a email poll, if it'll be a form, but there will be a vote sometime December 5th through the 9th. We do have to make the determination by December 10th and get that over to our developers to meet our window for the second phase of the candidate release. So are there any questions about what the difference is? And I think, Josh, you presented, so be ready to unmute because this may be something you have to chime in on. Is there any thoughts or concerns, arguments for or against the placement of airway placement technique?
Hi, Jen. Can you look at the question from David Saylor and then also Lauren Hugh?
So David says, how about things that are implemented incorrectly? So I'm assuming you're referring to the e-procedures, e-airway. If there's another example that you are referring to, if you think things are being done incorrectly, right? You want a name change or you want something like that. The time to talk about that is when it's in front of the stakeholders so that everyone has a chance to talk about it. The candidate release really is meant for a technical release to find technical items. But if
what do you mean by technical items? It's a technical data standard, so everything is technical.
Well, no, everything isn't. So when I say technical, what I'm referring to is like the one that you sent in that had the XSD documentation line incorrect on those 3 elements. That was technical. We absolutely corrected that as soon as you sent that in. Changing the name of a description or thinking or wanting a new element. Sorry, I'm going through the other items that we've worked on the last couple of weeks. Adding a new element because you want that to inform another new element that we have, that wouldn't be technical. That would be a change request.
Okay, so can you bring up the new stroke element?
The new, I don't have the data dictionary open. Let's finish what we're doing here and then we can talk about something different after because I want to read through the rest of them.
Okay, so like in open discussion then, because
no, we definitely will. There's some more chat that I want to look through to see if something that's specific to the airway placement technique that we're talking about.
Okay, so I do have questions about that. So just real quickly on the airway placement. So the airway placement technique belongs in e-procedures, but everything else does too. So if you don't have the dictionary yet, but the airway complications, that also belongs in procedure group. And having one in procedure group and not the other place means you can't correlate the technique with complications, for example, is one question that you can't ask right now because of how it's currently implemented in airway. The e-airway right now has all complications across the whole call in one big blob. And it does not differentiate.
So David, that's actually a really good point. There has been discussions in the past about moving e-airway into the e-procedures section, right? Not having a separate e-airway group.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That has been discussed before. So if that's something that should be discussed and gone over and a change request submitted to kind of remove that, that's definitely something that can happen. And I won't give my opinion on the e-airway versus e-procedures. I do know that I talked with Clay And I wish he could have been on the call, but that was one of the things that he brought up as well, is that there's been talk in the past of just getting rid of the E-airway group and having that be a subgroup within the E-procedures group itself. So yeah,
Yeah.
That would be a very good discussion for the V3.6, because there are some limitations about the way E-airway was built and causes duplication of data entry. And you can only really talk about one airway. You can't talk about multiple airways. So there's a lot of problems with the way E-airway is built. And so.
Yeah.
So
Lauren, oh, sorry, David, did you have more
no,
on the
go ahead.
procedure? Or did
so yes, for one or the other, I think to Chip's point, neither. Until we can do a better arc on this. So I definitely appreciate that it was voted on. I think the vote might have been done too much in isolation, where it's just a simple question on the form, but which yes or no, but presenting how it's implemented and how it's is going to affect the standard overall, I think would have been a very different discussion at the time. But whereas just collect area technique, that's great, sure, that sounds good, but now that we're seeing how it's implemented and just saying, oh, it's set in stone now, we're waterfalling down this implementation, we cannot possibly go back and implement it a different way. I'm really not a fan of that, like not at all. And so like I think it's just such a wrong question to ask is, what tweak can we make? Like, no, I think the problem is further up.
So you're wanting us not to add it at all?
Well, not even that, not at all. But making a change to airway obviously would be in 3.6. Chip said that, but that there's a few of the other suggestions I made that fall in this bucket as well. That they, hey, red flag. Hey, there's something wrong here. But you're suggesting that because it's been voted on that it's set in stone.
Right.
And
it was voted on and passed by quite a majority to add airway placement technique.
yes, and I understand that, and I'm not trying to say that. Yeah, I think that's not the only. That's not the be all and end all that it seems to be implied as. For reasons that probably are better for open discussion, or maybe even as a separate topic. So I think just trying to tweak it is not addressing the issues with this change and other changes.
Are there other folks on the call that have opinions or ideas? And I know you're just seeing this, and David has had a chance to think about this for a while. So did you, you're welcome to submit any comments or anything like that. You haven't had a chance to look at it, but is there anyone that has thoughts or comments or opinions? I'd love to hear from some of the data managers about the element itself. And I apologize, I can't remember if it was a data manager that originally requested the element itself. And I will go ahead and send this out to everyone. There's a couple of requests to have it sent to them. So I'll go ahead and send it out to everybody. And Lauren asked, should we not provide feedback for candidate release unless it's technical problem and hold for next version updates? So you don't have to hold, you can submit them. They'll just be included with the next version update, right? So the candidate release is the technical release. That's what the developers are looking for, right? Is there any issues with the development that's been done and the programming that's been done for the next version? So I don't want you to think you can only submit if you want them into a specific version. You can submit changes now for the next version. They just wouldn't be in version 3.5.1. And I hope that answered that. And if not, just let me know. Sanjiva said, adding new element to data dictionary is a major change for version 3.5.1. So no, so version 3.5.1, the new data elements are all put in as either recommended or optional, which makes it more permissible and not required in the XSD, so it is considered a minor change. Oh, sorry, Lauren, I didn't see the second one. So Lauren, you asked about the change about making e-medications 13 instead of a new element and attribute. That would be a change for the next version. And Mark, why was this not a part of the meeting in Park City? Because the conversation had not been completed with leadership on how to present. And go through it. It just wasn't ready in time for Park City. And it was a pretty full agenda by the time this came up. Okay, I don't see anything else that's specific to the airway placement technique. Like I said, I will go ahead and send this out. It is open for comments and concerns, and there will be a poll that goes out sometime between December 5th and December 9th, giving 4 days to answer. I know that doesn't seem like a big window, but it's one item, and I'm hoping to use a really easy process and not anything that requires anything hard pressed. I'm hoping you'll even be able to do it on your phone, because I know we're getting into everybody's vacation time here at the end of the year. Okay, so the next topic that I have is during the annual meeting, we voted on a few of the national Schematron rules that we discussed here that have been brought forward either by states or vendors or agencies. Anyone is allowed to submit a request to have validation rules discussed here on the V3 implementation call. And one of the ones that we talked about was the destination patient transfer of care date time should be recorded when transport disposition is transported by this crew or by this unit with another member, or this unit with this crew, or this unit with a member of another crew. Those are the reasons that we discussed. It seemed like unnecessary documentation to the person who asked us to discuss it. This is a situation where they felt like they were forcing the medics to document where it may not be relevant to their call. So here are the questions. Oh, don't know why that one showed up. Here's the summary of how that went down. They would like to add to the rule, type of destination is hospital, emergency department, hospital, non-emergency department bed, urgent care, or freestanding emergency department. And everything else would be left up to the states. Now, are there any additional thoughts or concerns with adjusting that national Schematron rule? All right, yay. Okay. So the next one that we talked about was unit left scene, and that'll be put in for the next version, that rule adjustment. The next one we talked about is EO25, unit left scene, date, time should be recorded unless unit disposition is canceled prior to arrival at scene. So in version 3.5, we changed that data dictionary definition, and we removed the with patient that used to be there in 3.4. So the reason that it was requested is not all states make that a requirement, that they have a left scene, date, time unless there's a patient. Suggested change to the rule was remove the warning from the national Schematron and allow states to include a warning or error in their state Schematron when they need to at the state level. And the overwhelming majority was no change. Please don't change it. Leave that warning where it is. Now, keep in mind, warnings do not prevent you from transmitting, right? So you can still transmit when you have a national schematron warning. So no change will be entered for that.
Jen, I thought I remember for that one that the discussion was it was going to be modified to only count when there was a transport. That was, I thought Clay just said, oh, we'll just make that adjustment and correct the language on it. So it's just applying when there's a transport. Because one of the big issues is services, if they have a CAD integration, they can't generate both a left scene time and an in-service time if they're the same time.
I do not have notes about that. I can talk to Clay about it. If that was something that he said during the meeting, we can definitely look into that.
This is Josh. That rings a bell to me, Chip. There was one question, I don't remember which one, so maybe it was this one, where the meaning of the votes was redefined on the fly during the meeting. And so if it was this one, it may have been, like you said, that people didn't want to remove the warning. They wanted to refine the warning to only apply to transports.
Yeah, that's what I recall, is that it wasn't take it out altogether or radically change it. It was just adjust the criteria to only apply to transports. Basically go back to the way it was in 3.4. Although that may, in the future, it may involve a definition change of the element itself. But at least for the schematron, it would apply the way it was before and the way that can kind of be practically entered now.
Yeah, so I just made that note. So I will definitely take that back and we'll look into that and we'll check it out on the video as well. Transport disposition should be recorded when unit disposition is patient contact made, which is E186. Reason for review request: non-transport units, non-transports when the unit departs scene before transport decision and states not allowing a not value. So this rule came to be an issue because the not values are excluded in states. And there was no suggestion for the national schematron rule because the national rule already allows for not values, right? So when you don't have that, it's okay. It still passes the national system. But there was a suggested change to the state schematron. I'm sorry, that should have said national schematron rule. Allow not values when E disposition 29 crew disposition is one of these, right? Where, I'm sorry, this was the state schematron rules. I apologize for that, guys. So when the state schematron rule allow not values when E disposition 29 crew disposition is 4229003. Sorry. For initiated primary care, transfer to another EMS crew, incident support services. So basically when the unit may not know, right, about what it is, about what the disposition is. And then there was also a change to the NEMSQA standard that was suggested. E disposition 30, change no transport to no transport by this unit. E disposition 30, add no transport by this unit. And E disposition 30, add transport unknown. And I remember there was a lot of discussion around this one, Chip. That's why I think I might have more notes about this one because we had a lot of discussion, and I apologize for not remembering the last one. So there were adding a new value of transport unknown to E disposition 30. This one up here, I kept it because it had the values up there. And then, is there any questions or thoughts or concerns about adding that as a value to E disposition 30 in the next version of NEMSIS?
Jen, you mean 351 or 3.6?
Nope. The 351's in the bag. So when I talk next version, it's 352 or 36 or whatever version is going to come out next.
Okay, I guess that wasn't clear at the NEMSIS meeting. I know that you and a couple of people said 352 a few times, and Clay looks and goes, 352? I don't think there's a 352.
Yeah, so there's just discussion about whether we might need another minor release, or whether we're ready for the major. That's all up there, up
Okay.
above, and how that's happening. So,
Okay. Got it.
Is
Thanks.
that is
That's
this a
why-
poll for
that's
a
why-
new choice for the next version, or what are you suggesting here?
So these will be entered as change requests for the following, maybe if I say following version after 351, that'll be easier. So for the following version after 351, these will be, this one here was adding new value of transport unknown. That will go for the next version after 351. And then this one that was approved for adding more definition around the type of destination, this will go for the one following, for the version following 351, right? So those will be change requests. They'll go through that new change request process. It'll hit the review committee. It'll go to all of the stakeholders about whether or not these are included at that point. So this was really just getting an idea from the stakeholders, because we had talked about these on the V3 implementation calls, whether or not they wanted to make adjustments to these national schematron rules. Because what I'm trying to not do is have everyone vote on things they didn't want in the first place, right? We've talked about these. Do we really want to move forward with this or not? That's what we had talked about on the V3 calls. So 2 changes came out of these discussions. So are there any questions or anything on the schematron rules? All right, I will go ahead and pass it back to you, Monet.
Thank you, Jen. We appreciate all of the updates and also the discussion. Thank you, everyone. That was excellent. Okay. Give me 1 second to get the agenda up here. All right, everyone, I just want to say thank you again for your attendance on the call. I want to take the time and see if, let's see, that's the end of the topics, but we would definitely like to open it up for open forum.
Monet, I want to go real quick with the new grant update.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Let me share my screen. There we go. All right, everyone. So there's a new grant that's been released, part of the Road to Zero Coalition. Real quick, just kind of go through this. So it's 2025 Road to Zero Community Traffic Grant. The Road to Zero Coalition is an initiative of the National Safety Council. They do collaboration with the Department of Transportation, other national, state, local state safety stakeholders. They have a goal of zero roadway deaths by 2050. It's quite a lofty goal, but they're pretty confident that we can meet that. Just a couple of things to know to help with if you decide to apply for this grant. So the organization, they strive to achieve the goal using a 3-pillar model, doubling down on what works through proven evidence-based strategies, something EMS in general is pretty good at, I think. Advancing life-saving technology in vehicles and infrastructure, and prioritizing safety by adopting a safe system approach and creating a positive safety culture. So who's eligible for this grant? An applicant must be a Road to Zero Coalition member. So you have to go to their website, sign up to become a member. And I do believe that it is free to be a member. I don't know what kind of perks or anything that gets you. You must be an organization, so it can be nonprofit, corporate, Individuals may not apply, so you as a person yourself cannot apply. You have to be part of an organization, government entities, cities, states, counties, governor safety offices. This can include any EMS services, pretty much wide open out there. The program must operate within the United States, and also included in eligibility are federally recognized Indian tribes, tribal organizations, or urban Indian organizations. So this is pretty all-inclusive. Just about anybody out there is eligible. Total annual funding amount is 750,000. Any requests made must be between 50 and 200,000. They will not award more than 200,000 to any one applicant. You may apply only one. I'm sorry. This will apply for only 1 year. So if you started a program, you were awarded the grant money, it's for a year, you'd have to reapply for another year if you wanted to sustain that. And then supplanting is specifically prohibited, so you cannot use any of this money to cover hiring new people or any salary, things like that. Some considerations to take into emergency medicine and trauma academics, practitioners, and advocates. This is on the website. These are things that they'll look for when you apply for the grant. So prioritize investment in trauma system needs and identify methods with greatest return on investment. They have a particular focus for rural areas right now. Work with local and state governments, prioritize trauma system investments and improve trauma care. Participate in forums about data and emergency communications. Adopt national trauma triage criteria for crash victims and collaborate with government and business on adopting safe system approach. So if kind of keep in mind some of those things if you apply, it'll make your grant stand out. Doesn't promise anything, but definitely helps. So some past 2024 grant recipients, just kind of there's several, but these are just an example of a few. America Walks, which is a project aimed to address the disproportionate impact of pedestrian fatalities among American Indian and Alaska Native individuals. University of Miami Bike Safe Program is a program to address pediatric pedestrian and bicycle injuries. And then the Hofstra University aims to address the significant impact of extreme winter weather on roadway fatalities. So something that my home state certainly understands well. The application deadline is January 17, 2025. So it must be submitted by 11:55 p.m. Eastern time there. There's a couple webinars coming up December 3rd and December 6th. The guidelines and application, you can follow that link. I will add some of these links to the chat before we're done today. You can also, there's a grant overview link there, just kind of lays everything out in a lot more detail than what I'm providing all you. And then if you wanted to contact anyone there, you'd have to go through that email address. That currently is the only contact information I was able to find. You can always email me if you're looking for some more information. I can point you in the right direction. Send us a help desk request, excuse me, and then also our NEMSQA grants page, which many of you are familiar with. The summary for this is not on there quite yet. It will be soon, but that'll have a bunch of links to be able to access information regarding this grant as well. And that's all I have. Does anybody have any questions? Excellent. All right, well, that's all I had, Monet. Like I said, I'll put a couple of those links in the chat there for everybody, and have a great day.
Thank you so much, Casey. We really appreciate that information. All right, everybody, let's go ahead and talk about our next meeting. So the 27th meeting is canceled due to the Thanksgiving holiday. So our next meeting will actually be on December 11th. And then we will cancel the 25th meeting for the holiday as well. And then we'll see you in the new year. All right. Are there any topics for open forum? Okay.
Yep. So if nobody else, this might be a lengthy one. So if anybody else has a shorter one, I might want to go first. But I wanted to talk about the revision process for 351.
I don't see any other hands up, David, so I think you have the floor.
Okay, so we submitted a number of tickets about the 351 revision. Some of them are requests, perceived deficiencies, and a number of them were things that we felt were done incorrectly. So I think Jen, you said you have the notes up. If you have like the tickets I submitted or anything like that, they could.
Oh, I didn't open the tickets, but I'm, are you talking about the ones that we've already created change requests for, or the ones that are still in the help desk?
I'm not quite sure where they are, but the stroke severity item.
Okay, that's still in the help desk. We're not done with that.
Okay.
I can open that.
And
So
so, like,
again, we opened the elements, the list of elements and changes.
yeah, so we don't even have any visibility on the total tickets that have been submitted, but so I mean the process you're following is waterfall, classic waterfall, and so in software development and other kinds of projects as well, where you kind of assume that the previous stages have all been perfect, and therefore you just have to run with it. And we tried to give feedback, and you try to phrase it even appropriately that this should not go live as it is because there's going to be problems with it. And I can point to some of those examples to give people a better sense of what we're talking about. But the
so just to give everyone ideas, the stroke severity score that was added for which is eVitals 34. I will open that up. Let me share my screen. That might help too. Second. David, do you mind if I share the text of our tickets, or would you like me to hide that?
That's fine.
Okay. All right. I didn't want to share just in case. Okay. So the element that we're talking about is the stroke severity score, which is a new element. That's the one that will allow a score from 0 to 42 when a assessment that has a numeric value instead of a positive, negative, or inconclusive.
Mm-hmm.
And then
right. So
one of the requests, and there was actually two tickets that were kind of joined together. So one of the requests was that the pertinent negative values should include refused, because eVitals 29 stroke scale score includes refused. So that was one of them. And then the ticket that we closed and added had a title change to 34 and 29. Couple different choices, right? This is you're kind of looking at the process when we go back and forth and we're trying to figure out exactly how you want that change request. This is kind of what it looks like, right? This is what the help desk ticket looks like.
Right. So I think a little earlier than that comment, and right. So so the problem that we're seeing with this is not a severity score. This is just the stroke score produces a numerical value, which is used to say, indicates positive, indicates negative, or is inconclusive, but it is not a severity score. And letting this go live out into the world with something that's clinically wrong is a huge red flag. And just because it was voted on, but it seems to have been implemented in a way that is incorrect. That's not what it means.
Are there any of the clinical managers that would like to talk about the title stroke severity? So this one, unlike the EOAE procedures, right? This had no changes to it. This is how it was voted on. Is there any clinical folks that want to weigh in about the stroke severity score title?
Hi, Jen. Sorry, can you hear me? This is James from SAMSU.
Hi, James.
Hey, yeah, I kind of agree with David on this, right? I mean, when you're doing a stroke assessment, the numerical values are more as a clinical guide to the practitioner to say, hey, this is the possibility that this patient meets the criteria. And so, having a severity score, I mean, whether it's a positive indication or a negative indication doesn't determine how bad the stroke is. That's something that's determined at the hospital.
Right. So I probably misheard something. So the eVitals 29 is the one that's for positive and negative. And
Right. What I'm saying is you're trying to calculate how bad a stroke is based off of a numerical value from an assessment that a clinician's doing. And what I'm not seeing is I'm not seeing any type of measurement scale, right? As opposed to how's this being classified as a minor, moderate or major, severity score. When the clinician doesn't really know that, they just know that there's a positive indication, and even the score that's being calculated is again just indicating that this patient meets this criteria, not determining whether or not this is a severe or non-severe stroke.
Okay, and then I do see a couple of the clinical data managers. I see Chad.
Jen, this is Chad. I was getting ready to jump in on that.
Okay.
James, I'm one that agrees. I agree with James on this. So one, it looks like the stroke severity score and looking at it is based off of the NIH stroke scale because they do 0 to 42 and they classify it minor, moderate to severe, and then severe, which is great. I think too often we in EMS a lot of times try and incorporate things at the hospital that and try and throw that into EMS. And the reality of it is, for us, we're not going to probably utilize this element because our people don't have time to do a full NIH stroke scale. If you're doing it accurately, is not a quick assessment and takes time to do. And so, yeah, I don't know. I just felt like sharing that. Like this is, I mean, at the end of the day, EMS providers are really trying to identify, is this a potential stroke or not? And if it is, we need to get them to the hospital, and then the hospital is going to do their thing. But I think one of our issues overall globally, and some of the stuff that I see lately, is we talk a lot about all of the things that we're trying to get people to document correctly, and then we keep adding in things that are probably more of a hospital measure that we're trying to bring into the pre-hospital field that just takes up more time and make it more difficult to document stuff. So that's just my 2 cents worth.
Okay.
And so maybe the
Melissa,
problem then
hang on
is that the description says that this is severity score for any stroke scale.
David, hang on 1 second. I want to read the comment from Melissa first, and then so Melissa Belgao put in there, in Washington, we will put LAMS in here, and that is definitely a severity score. Okay, David, go ahead.
Okay. So LAMS and NIH being severity scores, that's not saying that's wrong at all. That sounds great. But other scale, so if this only applies to those scales, it isn't coded correctly.
So the range is 0 to 42 because the lowest was 0 that was found, and I believe 42 was the highest integer that was found from the stroke scales, because there's multiple stroke scales in here that have a new value. And so we didn't want to add an element for every different stroke scale. So we added one that had that range. So I if I remember correctly, that's where the 0 to 42 came from.
Yeah, so it's just the highest number that any stroke scale takes, which is how I understood it at the time too. But a number of these are not severity scores, and you cannot infer severity from the score of a lot of those options. But I think not to get too on the weeds on this one, so I think there's really a lot of discussion to be had on this and several of the ones that I brought up.
And
kind of what I was bringing up for the open discussion topic is I don't agree that we're so waterfall down that we cannot discuss that what is right now in 351 may not be correct and may need to be changed. The implementation may need to be changed.
Jen, Sam Helge has her hand up.
Oh, absolutely. Go ahead.
Hey, so I want to, I totally agree with David here. There are a set of stroke scales that are in that we, accept, that we are supposed to be reporting on, that have no numeric association with them at all. And so I've seen this with the custom state data elements we have in multiple states. Generally, like Melissa said, they limit it to just the stroke scales that do have numeric values, like LAMS or race. If we could time box it, or time box isn't the right word, but box it in so that it is specific to a stroke instrument that has a numeric value, I think that would solve a lot for this particular question.
Jen, I would jump back in here again, Chad and Kansas. And the thing that's beneficial about what both David and Samantha are saying, just from my perspective of it, is EMS providers are inherently, I love them to death because I am one of them, but at the same time, they frustrate me in their documentation. And having something that just a stroke severity score is going to confuse the crap out of them. Even though they have these different things, Washington might use the LAM score and somebody else might use something different, but providers, when they see something and it's there, this is going to confuse them as to trying and understanding it and what it's for, regardless of how much information is put out on it. And so if you're wanting to have scoring for those that can have a score, it might take more work and it might be a little bit more difficult, but it just needs to be specific to each one. There needs to be a way to figure that out. And I know that's a lot more difficult and a lot more time, and the vendors may not agree with me on that, but if you're wanting a LAM score, then there needs to be that LAM. I mean, we just did it with the cows deal, but on something different. So if you're wanting LAMs, then there needs to be a LAM score. If you're wanting, the race, there needs to be a race score option. If that's the route we want to go, then I think it needs to be specific to that specific stroke assessment, so there's no confusion in it at all.
Peter Geiser from Oregon said, how about adding, if applicable, to the end of the description? Are you talking about eVitals 34, Peter?
I was just, I understand a lot of those stroke scales, the output of them, it's not applicable, right? It's not a severity score. But if we could narrow the scope of that element so that it, or potentially even naming the specific stroke scales that it is applicable to, or developing something in the documentation guidance that could assist people in filling it out.
Thank you. Are there other thoughts? And so we are at 9:30. So it looks like we will not have a vendor breakout session today. We're at the end of the meeting. John Becker from Document did say, or a Schematron rule that limits the score based on the type. So this has been a good discussion and helpful discussion. These are the types of conversations we hope to have before development with the version that follows 351, rather than after development. That's hopefully what the new change request process will put in place, is these really good discussions on those change requests. That's why there will be mock-ups of them provided for the discussion, rather than just general ideas discussed at different times, right? So that everybody's on the same page. Keenan put in a note, chat, the conversation about the stroke scale underscores, no pun intended, our earlier concerns about when changes to the NEMSQA standard can be commented on, especially changes in implementation. Right. So all of this will be taken back to leadership, and we'll get back to you, let them know what they say. Before we all jump off, are there any other comments or concerns? And then I will give Monet back the MC microphone.
Just going to bring up that we've had no visibility on any other tickets that may or may not have brought up similar issues.
When you say
I can see the ones that I submitted, but I have no idea if anybody submitted any others.
There were not.
Okay. I mean, there's another important one that I wanted to bring up too, which was the stuff about a procedure or medication was done outside of this unit's care. And that could be another long discussion, but I want to say it's just because it was a red flag to us and to a member of our team who was a former EMS agency director, which is that you can't have the crew do that because they are putting that in the record as a legal statement that another agency has done this, or another unit or another agency. And if that is shown to be incorrect, then the record could be not admissible in some kind of proceeding.
And there was a lot of discussion around those two at last year's annual meeting and on a couple of different V3 calls prior to the annual meeting around that request. And Anne, I do see your hand up. I think that request had originally come from you, so go ahead.
Honestly, and sometimes, and this is not a criticism, I feel like by the time when I put in the crest, it's been so long since sometimes I don't remember if it was me, and I've had discussions with other people and they're like, okay, that sounds good. And I wasn't at the meeting this year, much to my sadness. So I missed probably a lot of this discussion. So I hope I'm not being repetitive, but this happens in Arizona a fair amount. And it basically means that they end up documenting things that aren't necessarily accurate. And I know we're already over time. I don't know if we want to wait till a different meeting to discuss this or whatever, but one example would be, I don't know, maybe we're the only state that has fire-based EMS, but I don't think so, is we'll get an engine. Some of the crew will transfer over, some won't. Sometimes they won't at all. The ambulance will show up. They're both with the same agency, but they're a different unit. And because the way NEMSQA EPCRs work, you can only document currently one unit per EPCR. So that was given by that agency. They're legally responsible for that. The crew is listed, but technically they had to change their unit now to their AMBO because they can only have one listed. So it wasn't necessarily even given prior to their arrival, but it was given by a different unit, but it's their unit, but it's a different unit. So that was one of our reasonings, I think, behind it and it causes, we have so much fire-based EMS. I mean, Phoenix Fire, which is our largest, it's one of the largest cities in the US, they're fire-based EMS. Almost every metropolitan area in Phoenix is fire-based EMS. And I would imagine if there's other states that have fire-based EMS that don't have their agencies fill out 2 EPCRs, which they also don't want to do, that they would have the same need for some kind of way to indicate that. But like I said, there could have been a whole other discussion about other people and why they might use this or not. But that's what's on my mind.
Yeah, and there was no discussion this year about the version 351. I was referring to last year's annual meeting when we talked about the different items. This was just one I remember, and we did have a conversation about adding it as an attribute. That was one of the suggestions for how to do it, and I don't know why we went with the element, hence the reason why we want to have a actual process that these things go through when there's change requests. There are a couple comments. Mark Roberts is asking, unless it's a one size fits all, should this be a state or local issue? So like the stroke severity score, there were quite a few states that had implemented a custom element. So rather than have that be a custom element, it had been added as a change request for the next NEMSQA version it had been entered as a change request for version 351. I'm sorry, Chip, I know I keep confusing you with next version, and V351 hasn't come out yet. You're not the only one. Sundown also commented, from a provider's perspective, we use LAMS also in Houston. The score is directly tied to stroke acuity and severity. It's fast enough for providers to use. Pre-hospital impacts transport decision, clinically important. I want the severity score to be included. And then David asked a question. I think Sundown was answering your question that LAMS and NIH are not the same 0 to 42 scale. And then Mark Roberts asked, are we talking when documented as PTA? So the second, we're combining a bunch of different things here. So Mark, the one that we're referring to, I can go to it. It's actually, it's formatted like that, but it's when you're on scene at the same time. I think it's 15. I think I know. Yes. So this was added both for procedures and for medications, that it allows you to say, hey, this procedure was done by someone else other than our crew that was on the scene at the same time. So think about your major traumas where you've got multiple crews, or cardiac arrests. I know this happens in some states quite a bit, where they'll have 3 responders from 2 or 3 different agencies go on certain calls. So this was to allow them to document that way. And I hope I was able to answer the questions. If I haven't answered your question, we do review the chat, and we will answer anything that was not answered during the call. Thank you for all of those who stayed over time. I really appreciate it. These are the kinds of conversations we are hoping to have during the process of coming up with what should go into the next version. So that line in the, do I still have it? I do. So here, where we bring everything to all EMS stakeholders, this is where I'm hoping these conversations start to happen. And where the NEMSQA TAC is committed to providing you with enough information to have these well-informed conversations at this point. So thank you again, Monet. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. Thank you, everyone, for joining the call today. Thank you so much for the discussion. Please have a safe, wonderful holiday, and we'll see you back here in December. Take care, everybody.